Death didn't have its usual sharp edge here. It had dissolved into the very air. The marsh breathed a heavy, sodden stagnation, the stench of standing water and molding rot, tangled with the sickly sweet vapor of decay, coating the tongue like a bitter film of copper. The air of Arcadia had run out. It turned thick and motionless, like setting resin. The only thing that displaced it was a harsh squawk and the dry iron rustle of wings. The creatures of Ares hadn't just conquered this land. They had forced it to choke on its own helplessness. I stood on the edge and felt it for the first time, my will draining through my fingers like water. Endless. It was endless. The black mirror of the mire spilled out to the horizon, swallowing the silhouettes of the mountains and any hope of a fair fight. I froze in despair. To take a step meant sinking without glory, suffocating in the muck without ever drawing a blade. The thick reeds stood like a wall, mocking my strength. The hero who had slain the Hydra suddenly withered before this motionless, stinking mass. I didn't know what to do. My hands, built for the struggle, hung useless. The world narrowed down to the sensation of my own impotence before this silent void. The water was still, like frozen pitch. Ahead, nothing but a jagged wall of reeds, sharp as razors, quagmire that held no man, and thickets no boat could breach. A dead zone. The birds had scorched it, their toxic droppings seared into the earth, rendering it barren for decades, turning once blooming valleys into ulcerated wastes. No crickets sang here, no leaves rustled. Only the stench of decomposing shepherds and travelers unlucky enough to be caught here at twilight. Man-eaters, bred by the god of war. They knew no hunger that could be sated. Tightness in the chest. The weight of the shield on my left arm was becoming unbearable, and the fight hadn't even begun. Then she came. The air turned sudden, dry and sharp, like the moment before a lightning strike. Athena Pallas emerged from nothing. Her armor didn't reflect the light. It drank the gray gloom of Stymphalian. There was no pity in her eyes, only the cold, crystalline calculation of a strategist. It snapped me out of the trance. She held out 2 copper discs. "Take them, son of Zeus." Her voice was cold as a mountain spring. "Your strength is worth nothing here. You cannot run on water, and your sword cannot reach the clouds." I touched the metal. It vibrated as if the heart of a volcano beat inside it. "What are these?" My voice sounded like a stranger's, raspy from the marsh damp. "Crotala. Hephaestus forged them in the bowels of Etna. For 7 nights he wove the screams of subterranean winds and the moans of red-hot anvils into this copper. This is a voice not meant for mortal ears. Stand on that hill. Make them fly." She looked toward the marsh where the monsters nested. "These are no ordinary predators, Heracles. Ares raised them as living weapons. Their beaks and talons are brass. They tear through armor like dry leaves, and their feathers, solid bronze. They rain them down from the heights like a storm of arrows. If they catch you in the open, you'll be a sieve before you can even shout my name." I took the symbols. The metal burned my palms with cold. When I climbed the hill and struck them together for the first time, the sound didn't just travel through the air, it tore it open. It was a physical blow. The sound vibrated through muscle, through bone, twisting joints, making my eyeballs quiver in their sockets. And the sky cracked. Thousands of wings, the screech of metal on metal. It wasn't birdsong, it was the sound of 1,000,000 knives being sharpened at once. The sun vanished instantly. In place of light, a living, pulsing cloud of bronze unfolded overhead, breathing rust and fury. The first feather fell beside me. It didn't stick in the dirt, it punched through stone, leaving sparks in its wake. A whistle, short, like a whip crack. Another. The air grew dense with blades. I felt the skin on my neck crawl. But it wasn't fear of the pain. My spine turned to ice from the sheer absurdity of it. It was the shame of a living legend facing a mechanical, soulless meat grinder. My might, which had crushed boulders, felt like soft wax under this faceless bronze rain. For a moment, I went numb. The world stopped being an arena for heroes. It became a death trap. I will die here, it flashed through my mind, not as a thought, but as a cold fact. Not by the sword, not in a glorious battle, but ripped to shreds by 1,000 tiny, faceless blades. My legs grew heavy, as if filled with marsh mud. My heart beat with the rhythm of a convict facing a blind wall. In that moment, I was no son of a god. I was a target, an animal craning its neck for the axe. My hands, used to crushing the throats of monsters, trembled helplessly. They didn't know how to strike the air when the air was exploding with metal. I fell, pressed myself into the mud beneath my shield. The splash of marsh sludge burned my face. It got into my mouth, bitter, reeking of peat. Athena was gone. I was alone. Tremors in my forearms. Fingers won't move. They felt numb, as if already dead. Thud, thud, thud. The bronze feathers hammered against the shield. Every strike echoed in my skull. I could hear my own pulse, the panicked drumming of a cornered beast. My saliva turned bitter. The taste of iron on my palate became so real, I began to chew my own lips without feeling the pain. I felt every notch on the inside of the shield. Oxygen was failing. Every strike from above made my whole body flinch, as if they weren't hitting wood, but my very vertebrae. But then the fear began to shift. The paralysis broke. I realized if I don't move now, I never get up. The bitter taste of filth on my lips suddenly became fuel. How long did I lie there? A minute? An eternity? Time turned viscous. I saw through a crack. The sky was shuttered with rust. They circled, the bastards of divine wrath, their copper beaks glinting in the scraps of pale light. The rage came from deep in my gut. It shoved me upward with a hoarse animal exhale. Stand up. My feet slipped. My back was strained to the limit, muscles tight as ship cables, heavy with molten lead. I struck the crotala again. The thunder forged by Hephaestus hammered the last of the fear out of my joints. Then, the bow. It was the mechanics of slaughter, fingers pulling the string, again and again, until the skin on my tips split and the blood made the wood slick. Every shot a kick to the shoulder. Every flight of an arrow, a brief flash of hope in this bronze chaos. The crunch of bone under metal feathers, the sound of an arrow punching through a bronze chest, heavy carcasses slapping into the black water. The marsh devoured its own. They fell like broken machinery, washing away the toxic filth with their own black blood. The air grew hot with the stench of scorched feathers and split innards. I shot until my fingers were nothing but a raw wound, until my vision blurred. And then, emptiness. A sudden, painful quiet. The last of the birds were fleeing, vanishing over the horizon toward the distant shores of the Pontus. They carried the terror with them, the sound of metal that kills metal. I stood amidst the mangled reeds. My hands shook. Sweat stung my eyes, acrid and salty. I looked at my palms. Rust, blood, and marsh mire. A hero? No. In that moment, only exhaustion. Every tendon ached. Around me, only silence and the bodies of birds slowly sinking into the quagmire. The water was becoming a black mirror again. The ground beneath my feet was cold. I knew this wasn't the end, but for now I wanted only one thing, for this smell of iron to finally leave my lungs. I wiped my hands on the grass, but the grime only pushed deeper. I turned and walked away. My steps left deep furrows. I walked without looking back, feeling the marsh close its embrace behind me. My mouth was still bitter, and my head was still ringing with the brass of the crotala, the voice of a god that had forced my heart to beat again.